So next question is from Gordon, if you want to go ahead and dive into that one.
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you, Gordon, for your question. Here, Gordon is asking about supply chain risk control and how far will the FDA push into the supply chain. So what Gordon's saying is, do we see the FDA pushing deeper into the supply chain on ready-to-eat processing to investigate and swab all suppliers to the ready-to-eat foods, especially those without a kill step? And then he's sort of following up is how soon do you see them going that depth in the food chain? Well, to answer Gordon's second part first is the FDA are pushing into the supply chain already. They always were. And it's been a few years since I worked at FDA, but we did that then. If there was a situation with a food, the whole point was to chase back in the supply chain through a trace back to find out where the most likely cause was. And this particularly was in the fresh produce space, where you might get an outbreak linked to a particular produce item, and you're wanting to chase back through handling, repacking, sorting, farm levels to see if there is any point where there was more likely than other to be the source of that. So do I see FDA pushing deeper in the supply chain? Absolutely. As they go back into that supply chain, they will be swabbing potentially. They will certainly be looking for regulatory risks as they go back, and they are doing that right now. And if we go back to the question on the flaxseed that I think came from Mary, if that flaxseed had been linked to an outbreak, and I'm using the example that I talked about, is say the flaxseed is used in a cold pressed bar by manufacturer A, who receive it from manufacturer B. They receive the flaxseed from manufacturer B. There's an outbreak linked to the cold pressed bar. The FDA would come to the cold pressed bar facility. They'd be looking for problems there. They may well be doing swabs. Let's assume it's Listeria. They'd be looking for process failures. They'd be looking for packaging issues. They'd be looking at environmental controls in manufacturer A, where the cold pressed bars are made. Didn't find anything there. That all looked good. Well, let's look at ingredients. Obviously, that's where the agency goes. We all know it. And let's test some ingredients. Oops, the flaxseed has come up positive for Listeria. Back to the flaxseed manufacturer, manufacturer B in our little example here. They get in there, and you bet they would be looking at exactly the same things. Do you have Listeria all over your production area? Now, you may be selling it as a non-ready-to-eat, just like we had with Mary's question, but that will not stop the FDA coming in and poking around and looking for trouble in your food contact areas to see if you are the source of that. So, indeed, Gordon, they are pushing deeper. They will push deeper, and they're doing that now. One other point on this is that keep in mind, part of FSMA compliance is supply chain risk control. So as you're looking at your suppliers, you're required to do a hazard analysis and determine what risks need to be prevented. And to Gordon's question, who in my supply chain is controlling that risk? And you, as the person who's having to be compliant with that part of FSMA, needs to explore back in your supply chain. And you may have to go back 2 steps, 3 steps before you get to the manufacturer who is actually controlling the risk that you've determined could be there, like Listeria. And make sure through your supplier verification that that risk is being controlled and that facility that's controlling that risk is compliant with FSMA. That's got nothing to do with the environmental monitoring part of FSMA. That's got everything to do with the supply chain control part of FSMA. So again, Gordon, thank you for your question, and that's a good topic that gets us into both supply chain control as well as RTE issues. So, Jill, do we have any more?